Well, welcome everyone. My name is Leighton. I'm part of the team at Know How. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today is a topic that I have not seen anyone talk about in the restoration industry, but what could be a more critical conversation. My guest, Liliana, is one of the world's experts in how you design customer experience in large, busy, complicated industries to really stand out, but also to be able to retain staff and actually to charge more than your competitors. So today we're going to talk about what we call customer experience. It's not customer service, customer experience. And so my guest Liliana, welcome. Liliana, why don't you take a moment and just introduce yourself and give us a little bit of a summary of your roadmap to bringing you to where you are today.
Um, Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Liliana Petrova. I'm the CEO and founder of the Petrova Experience. We are a small customer experience consulting firm. All of us, or most of us, came from JetBlue Airways. The love for humanity and customer experience overall started there, and we treat employees as customers as well. So our term customers is a little broader than our some of our competitors maybe. And the roadmap for us really is to start with your employees, treat them as customers, and then use that fuel to create and design a customer experience that you want to have using these engaged employees that you have created, technology, and process and procedure effectiveness.
So what I'm hearing in that is, this is more than just say a couple new tools in your tool belt. This is kind of a, let's call it almost a different way of doing business, of delivering business, and how you and how your staff become an extension of that. So let me set the stage a little bit here. So the individuals that we work with, these are individuals who work in what's called the catastrophe or like the disaster restoration industry. So when we look on the news, anytime you see, Liliana, like a storm hammering the coast, or fires tearing through California, or COVID, infecting the workplace, the individuals who go in and in a sense restore things to the way they were before are the customers that we work with, are the companies that we support. And what they're responding to is a customer's worst day. And so if you think about, just think about how upended our life would be if we came home from picking up the groceries and our home was on fire, or my kid's school was, 2 feet underwater, or all of a sudden you're feeling sick and you open up the wall and there's mold through the whole house. At the end of the day, these are companies that are responding to a customer's worst day. This is a very crisis-driven industry. So would you say that creates a good opportunity for customer experience, or a bad opportunity for customer experience?
I think in a weird way, this is the best moment to create great customer experience. There are many studies that show that people who have a problem in their experience and you recover that problem are much more engaged and connected with your brand than people who didn't have a problem to begin with. In that sense, what you're explaining is extremely vulnerable and emotional state of mind of your customer, which means
Mhm,
anything that you do right will be
mhm,
received with an amplifier. And
mhm,
every great experience that you create will be appreciated much more than if they
mhm,
weren't having that situational, emotional charge that you're meeting.
mhm,
That also means, though, that the people who deliver the experience would need to have an emotional, I don't want to call it superiority, but maturity to see through this situation and understand the almost the responsibility they have in the moment. And I
mhm,
think when people say, hey, so and so took care of me, that
mhm,
usually means so and so was stronger than me in the moment. So and
mhm.
so was less emotional in the moment. So and so thought rationally when I couldn't. And having that customer experience delivered on the other side means that you need to have a predetermined designed experience ahead of time and an emotional intelligence in the moment and almost like force in the inner force to execute that.
Mm. So there's a lot of things in there that I think are we could pursue because there's a lot of value in what you're describing. So when I think about what you're unpacking, my brain jumps between, is this customer service or is this customer experience? So just as a point of clarification, how would you distinguish customer service from customer experience before we go deeper into customer experience?
Sure. Customer service. I call customer service the birthplace of customer experience because customer service started in the call centers, and we always had call centers. I mean, forever and ever. But then digital experience came, the smartphone came, the new tools of creating touch points with your customers arrived. Well, now what do you call that? If you put some thought into this interaction, is that service? Not always. A chatbot can be part of the moment of solving somebody's problem. However, doing web design and having a flow of even buying a car or booking an appointment for something, this is no longer customer service. This is part of the whole customer experience that a customer has with you. It's a different type of touch point, but it's also different channel. We talk a lot about in customer experience about channels. And in your case, I think that also is valid. You could have a physical call that would be the phone channel. There could be part of my experience with the restoration company of paying my bill online. That would be a digital channel. But then there is also a lot of in-person, what we call physical experience. And the new wave almost of customer experience has been this whole mindset of how do you take these three very different, almost environments and different groups of people in your company, and how do you create that connectivity and seamlessness and connectedness among them? And that is customer experience. The customer experience is the science and the work behind this orchestration at the service level in the back end that creates this unity. And as I already mentioned, I want to stress again on that fact is that the common denominator that touches all of these things is people. Because there are people who design the website, there are people who pick up the phone, and there are people that service your customer in person. So if you create that mantra, that mindset, like you said, internally, and you embed it in the people, then they're going to embed it in their work output. And that is customer experience. Customer service is a subset of that. User experience on the website is a subset of that. But the whole thing, thinking about the whole journey, is customer experience, is the higher mode of the system.
So would you say that like when I think about all of the elements from the moment a job comes in, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens, and then we kind of hand them back their keys. And so that is we have to think about the journey the customer goes through, and that is designing the experience. And then within that, there are interactions where we need to define what does customer service look like in those interactions. Is that fair?
So as the science of experience, so the service by itself is when I need you to help me. An experience may not be that I need you to help me. It may be that I want to do something by myself without talking to you. And in that sense, there is no service. There is just my experience. And especially the younger generation, they don't want to talk to people as much. So if I want to be able, I'll give you an example of ticketing. The whole kiosk, the invention of a kiosk and buying a ticket, or what we did in JetBlue, self back tagging, are essentially things that we created for the customer to self-serve. We call them self-service customer experience, but there's no customer service in that moment.
Mhm.
See what I mean? So
Mhm.
in that sense, the differentiation that I would put is that if you're solving a customer problem, or if
Mhm.
you are offering a service, it is customer service. But if you are designing, like we let's come up with this last touch point that we talked about in our break.
Mhm.
If you design an interaction where 3 or 6 months after you've restored a house, you send this person a gift,
Yeah.
and that would be part of a customer experience, not a
Mhm.
service, because you're not really interacting, but you have
Mhm.
thought about the customer experience and you've said, you know what, wouldn't it be great to celebrate the end of this trialing period for my customer?
Mhm.
Wouldn't it be great to share that
The
with
relief.
them, that relief, and be there with
Yeah.
them? Well, that's a customer experience exercise. So everything that would go into that work, oh,
Mhm.
what are we going to buy? Who's going to ship it? What's going to be the trigger of the shipping? How many months? This is going to be a work for somebody who we call is a customer experience professional.
So Liliana, if I'm, if I'm a business owner, I'm listening to this. I mean, to me, it makes sense. The question always comes to mind, if I was to make the investment of doing this type of work, reaching out to maybe an expert like yourself, to be able to maybe get some guidance on that. What are like the tangible, everyone always wants to ask, like, what's going to be the return on investment of taking my customer experience seriously?
Yeah, I personally think the business case is amazing, especially in your industry. The
Mm-hmm.
first thing that comes back as a big benefit, especially if you start with your employees, is lower turnover. I mean, there is no doubt that if you have great customer experience, your employees will feel it. They will. Who doesn't want to make people happy? Just think about that. If you deliver a customer experience great and you work for a brand that cares for you, you get it at the two sides, right? One side, you're being taken care of by your bosses and your organization, so you feel valued. And then on the flip side, your customers are validating your purpose every day because they show appreciation for your work. So turnover is generally much lower if you do this right. And we do know that turnover costs are ridiculous. There's actually many studies. It can go up to $100,000 depending on the skills of the employee you're looking for. The second is efficiencies. If you design this correctly, seamlessly, your throughput can be increased much higher and be much better. So, for example, give an example without going into details because it's a little confidential, but the one of the things we did for JetBlue was essentially that there was an asset that was at capacity and there were queues and lines. Through designing great customer experience, we were able to move people faster through the same space, increasing the throughput. And then you have the increased revenue by just word of mouth. If I was the one receiving that gift from you and you didn't forget about me, I would tell people left and right about this, especially if it's an industry that generally hasn't done this before.
Yeah.
And lastly, with that, you can charge a premium. It is proven and accepted by the consumer to have a premium for great customer experience. So there are many ways you can go proving the business
Mhm.
case to invest in this.
So if I'm listening to this discussion and I have to kind of champion the this idea to say the leadership of my company, what I'm hearing is on that slide deck, right? What I'm saying is number one, staff that are part of a company that care about customer experience and who deliver a great customer experience stick around longer. And they say, okay, that sounds good. But turnover is one of the biggest problems in our industry, Leanna. The second thing, what I'm hearing you say is that customers will brag about you, right? And so I think that that's a huge component of it. And then I mean, I'm sure everyone is going to pay attention when you say it's proven, like the data's in, like the research is done, that if you have a reputation for delivering a better customer experience than a competitor, then you can charge more and it's acceptable. And I can totally agree. I can totally agree with that. I know that, man. even myself, like I am comfortable, paying more if I know that if I'm not there, my spouse is going to be respected. I know that my neighbors are not going to hate me for having work done. You know what I'm saying? I 100% pay a premium for that, and I'm curious. Everyone who's going to watch this, their mind is going to go to this question: is, but Liliana, the people who are delivering the work for me, sometimes they're not very polished people. Like sometimes, oftentimes they can be subcontractors. Sometimes they can be workers that, don't have a lot of experience. Sometimes they're project managers that are just like A type, like get it done. And they may not be that kind of, they're not that snuggly. You know what I mean? What would be your advice for people like that?
I love the snuggling reference.
I don't know.
Well, see, I do believe that empathy can be taught.
Yeah.
And again, I wouldn't call it taught. I would say empathy can be awakened.
Hmm.
And with the hospitality training that is part of what we do as well, not just us in general, that is offered around, you can create a curriculum that is very relevant to the day to day of
Hmm.
those people, and then connect the emotional state of their, create that like almost like space and bubble where all these unpolished and type A people enter for some time, and they commit to just being connected with their customer. So with this training, I think there's a lot of emotional shift that happens in people when they take the moment to just understand, hey, like, what am I really doing? What are we here doing for people? Yesterday, we showed one of our clients an image of the famous Kennedy quote when he saw this person sweep the floors in NASA and saying, "What are you doing?" Right? And when he said, "I'm putting a man on the moon." I I believe this is this elevation of just allowing people to understand, hey, you're not, like you said, you're not cleaning bathrooms, you're not cleaning debris, you're restoring a person's life. You're helping somebody who is terrified right now. I had a girlfriend that was living in a hotel with a child with some behavioral challenges. You're helping a mother who is even more stressed now with a child who is throwing fits every day because they don't have a base. If you tell the story to anyone
Yeah.
and put that context around what they do day in and day out and send them back out, trust me, there will be a change in the behavior. Now, the key
Yeah.
with this, though, is to wrap this afterwards with some, we call it accountability. It's a bad word, but it's a good word at the same time. Is that cultural accountability to say, hey, we committed to
Mhm.
you, we gave you this training, we had this time out, but now let's make a pact that you will do this consistently, that this part of our employment agreement, that you will conduct this business in certain way, and then you
Mm.
have the base to self course correct if people don't act accordingly. Another
Mm.
thing to mention about, subcontractors that may be a challenge as well is, the service level agreements exist for financial reasons, but you doesn't it's a lever that you
Mhm.
can use in customer experience as well. And you can always add a requirement, a quantifiable requirement, if you survey your customers to say, hey, subcontractor, let's shake hands that if I hear a lot of complaints about the behaviors of your employees, that we have some fines or that we can part ways.
Mm. So, so the question of how do you get sometimes people that may not, I would say at face value, may think they are not going to deliver this experience. So what I'm hearing there is, provide the training in a way that's relevant. And then, I wrote it down. I think that concept of a pact with a worker. And what I don't think that you would disagree with this. What I'm hearing between the lines is that there's almost a mutual pact because I, as your employer, in a sense, I'm going to commit to this, and you, as an extension, will commit to this. And then as a subcontractor, it's within that agreement saying, you as an extension of the experience we provide to the market agree to this and this. These are things we put a lot of value on. And if you don't deliver that, then we agree as adults, as adults, like we agree that these will be the implications of not following through on this. Is that a fair summary?
That is absolutely fair summary. And that is a very big ingredient in
Mm,
success when you scale,
mm,
and especially when you have turnover, right?
yeah.
With turnover, that means you put this training in your orientation, so you
Mm,
know that the newcomers get that too.
mm,
And also in um, with turnover, there is also this almost permission, right? You get the
mm,
permission to weigh how the job is done equally to what and the efficiency of the job.
mm,
Infusing this almost like vertical of the how is
mm,
what creates this customer centricity that you people read about in all over the news and everywhere. People talk
mm,
about customer centric. How am I customer centric? What is customer centricity? Well, it means that there is tangible tangible consequences
mm,
if you're not customer centric. Because guess what? People are not just going to wake up one day and be like, oh, yeah, from now on, customer number one. No, you got to incentivize that somehow. And it can be done subtly with like bonuses, with like you can gamify it and have,
mm,
you know, I don't know, awards, all kinds of stuff that you can, there's
mm,
all kinds of tools that you can leverage
mm,
internally. Keep reminding your people that this is really important, and it wasn't just the flavor of the month, that it wasn't because you just went to a conference and came back and said, this is cool, I want, this woman said this, let's do it. You got to
mm,
stay on vigilant on it
mm,
and infuse your HR processes and procedures with that dimension almost,
mm,
so that it kind of lives on its own.
mhm, mhm. So in that, so if I was to start now taking this, because right now, I'm a convert. I'm even thinking internally. I'm like, okay, so there is work that I need to do in my company now. So you're making me think, Liliana. So we're gonna keep you and I will keep chatting because this is a huge thing. But there's two things that I think really jumped out at me. But I want to anchor some of them first. So when because there's an interesting I almost think of a yin and a yang, but there's the soft elements of this exercise, but then there's also the hard tangible elements and process and system and procedures. Those play an important role. How would you describe the function of processes and workflows and procedures in an effective customer experience?
Yep, great question. So first, before I tackle that, I will divide the procedure or the journey of becoming customer
The journey.
centric into two big buckets.
Hmm,
One is what we call the soft side. You call it the soft side, which is the
mhm,
hardest stuff to do actually, is call it culture creation, for lack of a better word, customer centric culture creation. This
mm,
comes with the processes and procedures that will be embedded in what I just talked about, which is HR, pure HR.
mm,
What questions do you ask when you hire people? How do you do performance reviews? And do you measure them on these behaviors that you're setting out in your training? Are you
mm,
allowing your bonus and pay structure to have a variable portion? That's something I've advised my clients as well. There are so many employers that just have fixed price, fixed salary. And I'm like, no, carve it, break it into, so you can use some of portion of your pay as an incentive to act a certain way. Otherwise, what's your carrot, right? So these are all procedures and things that you intentionally design to
mm,
sustain that behavior over time and as you grow as a company. That is
mm,
culture. And these processes and procedures are more HR ingrained, but the key is when you do this to recruit people from the company almost to take HR and remove the boundaries of it a little bit and have this friendly operation stuff. So let's say when you hire somebody, you don't just keep it at HR, but you recruit like somebody who is doing the job in the recruiting process. How cool is that? Now you have somebody who's doing the job, right? They'll ask different questions. They also will flag different things for you because they know who's successful in the job, who's not. An HR person is not even able to do that. So these are these process and procedures that are just HR, but then I want to make sure it's not just HR. It's HR hosted almost, but it's not only HR. And then there is the process and procedures of creating customer experience. Now, this is the outlooking stuff. And the process around that is the process of what we call journey mapping, where you go and you intentionally take, again, all kinds of people from your organization and you say, okay, folks, what is the customer experience that we want to deliver? Oh, want to be great. Okay, well, what does that mean? Let's imagine we're at the first day we made. What do you think we can do on day one? What do you think we can do on day three? What do you think that our customers' most important thing is in that moment? Because the other thing that's important to talk about in customer experience design is that the needs of your customers will change on their journey. Sometimes they want to be cuddled. Sometimes they just want it to be fast and easy. They don't want to waste time. So you got to match these emotions in your design. So if I say, when I pay, I just want to be quick in and out. I don't need you talking to me. I need you just get it done. Then your design on the flip end should be, okay, can we make this self-service so they don't even call us? Can we take this horrible PDF and make it into some app so it's easier to see and they don't have to print? So this would be something that I would talk about in that touch point design. But if it's the first meeting, then I'll just load it with empathy. And I'll be like, this is the moment where they're vulnerable. They need to be feeling confidence that we understand their emotional deep needs so they can trust us to rebuild their home. Okay, well, how are we going to design for that? This is not efficient. This is not fast. This is where you take a timeout, type A player, right? And this is where you slow down. And this is where you ask how they're feeling.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Say, how is your family? Where's your dog? Right? And then you make that emotional connection. So the process is designing this on the top, and then the process and procedures are what we call the service design below this, like think of it, the visibility line, where the customer's not going to see how you get this done. They're just going to experience the stuff we talked about. But at the back end, you have these processes and procedures that are much more tangible, concrete, and need to be followed in order for the consistency to happen. Because otherwise you don't have a brand, you have like flukes. And that's where you get together and you say, okay, at day one, this department needs to do this. At day 5, this department does that. And we call them ownership lanes. Underneath that line, we make a lane for each department and what they would do when, so that you have this accountability and it's clear.
So very helpful. And just at the end, you said something that I'm like, it kind of made me wince, because I've in the past, I've run companies that are, service companies and construction companies, and one of the things that no one wants to admit to is, number one, we don't know if there was a process breakdown until something went wrong, right? And the other thing is that what we call our brand or our commitment to the market is just honestly, we've just had so many flukes in a row where just either something, either people would just, my staff just slept well. I mean, they weren't trained, you know what I'm saying? So I'm wondering, the question is, how do you manage to ensure a good customer experience happens consistently, predictably, especially when you have so many touch points. There's a lot that can go wrong. So sticking the landing once is hard, but doing it routinely just seems so difficult. Like, what advice do you have for us in that?
It's very draining on the leaders. You're the ambassador and you gotta just keep repeating it like crazy
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
and over and over and over ago. So I don't know where is that book that I have, but Ritz Carlton,
Mm,
the guy from Ritz Carlton wrote a book, very easy
mm,
read for those who want to get a pick up a very easy, super easy book. Okay, this is no theory whatsoever, but he
mhm.
also talks about how he designed his excellence, and it's just repetition. Anyway, he has a whole chapter on just keep repeating it. It's not rocket science. Just keep going on and that's draining for leaders, right? Because
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
leaders don't have such a high turnover, and you gotta
Yeah.
just keep doing Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
When I was in JetBlue,
Yeah.
we had a service. I want to say that we had 800 supervisors in the service department, and my former boss was absolutely vigilant about us meeting with them once a year. Okay,
Mm,
but the room only held 200. So guess what happened?
mm,
Guess what happened? 4 days in a row,
mm.
same content, rerun.
Wow.
This is
Just
why I remember that was because I hated it, but I also remember the effectiveness of this. Because think about it, the audience sees this for the first time,
yeah.
and you just activated your whole workforce.
Yeah.
Yes, it was once here, it was required. None of us could just skip it. She would get all of us. I don't know how many directors we were, but seven, let's call it 12 people maybe.
Yeah.
We'll just flip on the stage over and over. This is what it took. We had another coach, whatever, somebody who came to help the execs that did
Yeah.
an analysis on the calendars. And what he found, what it was a woman, I think, what she found was that the amount of time that our leaders had with employees versus the amount of time they had with their peers was ridiculous. Like 60,
Mhm,
70% was with people.
mm,
So customer-centric organizations, this is to say, customer-centric organizations have leaders that carry the weight of this. They
mm,
interact consistently with their people. They reinvigorate people. It is a very big investment in people. But the biggest secret that nobody talks about, and maybe don't say it to too many people, is that the investment is not in the customers. It's in the employees. And
mm.
when you get this motion right internally, because you
Yeah.
don't need to do the customer side, because they're going to do it for you.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
ratio is
Yeah.
crazy, right? The ratio becomes thousands. Think about the
Mm,
power, the amplifier you have with that. So you have 2,000 people and you just did the work to amplify them. Now they're going to touch so many more because you can't
mm,
possibly be in every touch point, but they
mhm.
are.
No. Yeah. No. Absolutely. And I think that the idea that that you have to fight a two-front war as a leader. You know what I mean? Like you got to win with your staff and you got to win with the customer. That's I think that's very encouraging to say, actually, if you just knock it out of the ballpark with your
Mhm.
staff, you know, they will, you know, they will be the hands and feet of this program, and then they'll own it, is what I'm hearing.
They will.
So, and so I'm curious, Liliana. So there's the staff side, but then all along the while, what I'm hearing in what you're encouraging people to take very seriously is that you need to, in a sense, have an ability to temperature check your customers. You
Mhm.
know, so how do you go about collecting data on how customers perceive your business's customer experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well,
Hmm.
the first thing I would say, don't jump to the technology because I am often asked, "Oh, can you give me which vendor?" I was like, the moment we go and talk about vendors, I know you don't know what you're doing. The first thing is, what do you want to do? What customer experience do you want to have? If you can't tell me, we're not ready to ask anybody anything. We got to figure out what is success. And believe it or not, this is extremely hard answer people can produce. Like it's really hard. 9 out of 10 of my customers initially are like, I don't know, which is not a bad thing. Just say no. I'm just saying if you cannot answer this question, it's too early. take the
mm,
time to say, I want blah, blah experience, then break it down
mm,
into specific questions of what do you mean by that? And
mm,
then ask those. That is the proper order of events. The
mm,
second thing I would say is like you need to decide when is the best time to ask that question.
mm.
So for an
Like
airline,
like in the
the
journey.
journey, yes,
Yeah. Mhm,
it can be at the end of the experience, but
mm,
depending on what your goal is, you can also sprinkle some questions along the experience. Depending on the
mm,
length of the journey, it can be, hey, you're gonna have, if your relationship with your customer is 6 months, maybe you do
mm,
one in the beginning about expectations, maybe you do one in the middle to say how are we doing, maybe you do third at the end, would you recommend us, which is the standard question, net promoter score that has the most benchmarking data, and you can put this in your marketing materials and everybody would know what that means.
mm,
That is the third layer is like, when is the right time to ask? So it's not too late, but it's not too early. And
mm,
then the last thing I would say is in terms of collecting data, if you just collect it,
mm.
don't do it. You
Yeah.
have to have an idea of what you're going to do with it.
Mm,
Okay, now you know ABC. Do you have
mm,
a meeting that you share these results with? Who is
mhm,
the recipient? If there are things that come in that are saying that there are problems, who is your project manager to make sure that you address those things?
mm,
These are also things to think about when you collect
mhm,
feedback. And again, I'm not
mm,
saying this to be intimidating, to say, oh my God, it's a huge engagement. But at the same time, no matter how big you are, at least empower one of your people to be the voice of the
mm.
customer, as we call it internally, so that
Yeah.
people don't ignore what they hear.
Yeah. So it sounds like, there's, the leader is the ambassador for the change internally, but you're also electing almost like an ambassador for the customer, to
Yes.
always, in a sense, represent them.
Yes.
Yeah, these are very tactical. When we started this conversation, I was like, I think this might be a conversation where it's really inspiring, but it's hard to implement. But I'm actually finding that it's very inspiring and it's actually very tangible. Like it's actually very tactile, Liliana. So
Mhm.
I hope some of our listeners take you up on your offer and they actually contact you because this is very tactile. So I want to kind of move towards closing, but there's a few questions I really would love to get your perspective on, and I'm going to call this like the rocket fire round.
Okay.
Okay, so here's a rapid fire round. A lot of the restoration industry is individuals who are probably, I'm just gonna paint with a big brush here, 50 to 65 years old,
Okay.
who've been in the industry for a long time, who are delivering this service increasingly through people who are in like their early 20s.
Okay.
So there are some
Yeah.
there are some generational differences.
Yeah.
And so what I see is, I see there's the entrenched way of doing it. And then there's all of the preferences of the young Gen Z, late millennial, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so how do you do customer service when there are, I know this is a big question, but there are such generational gaps between decision maker and person who has to get on board as the ambassador, and young people that are just young and different, different
Mhm.
than the way that the boss thinks about it. What's your advice on winning through those generational differences?
This is a this is not a fast answer.
I guess so. Yeah.
I'll try my best. My best super short answer is the 50 to 65-year-old person needs to go back to
Mhm,
their 20s and meet their workforce. In other words, if you expect the people that work for you to understand you and come to you, you will wait for a really long time. The key is to be a servant leader, what we call it.
mhm,
And I'll give just a very quick anecdote about this.
mhm,
I had the privilege to meet the Apollo 13 astronaut team last week. It was one of the most
mhm,
humbling experiences in my life. And we had a couple of the astronauts and a couple of the system engineers on stage telling us what really happened in those 4 days. And one
mhm,
of them said, it wasn't even the question, but he said, I want to make sure that people here hear this. If we even for 1 second had a micromanager, none of us would be alive. And he said, I don't even know what this is today. All we heard was, how can we serve you? What do you need? What do you need? He was like, we never heard in NASA anything else in the 60s. So today, for some reason, sadly, this is not the case. Very few leaders actually ask their people, what do you need? How can I serve you? So my short answer is that the owners would need to understand that their actual job is no longer to tell, it is to serve. And the moment they flip that paradigm, everything will work just fine.
Well, yeah, that is very, yeah, that's a very powerful like very, it's I think it was Stephen Covey who used to say, this is simple, but it's hard.
Yeah.
This is simple, but it's hard. So two last questions. These are much simpler. If somebody's thinking about this, like, where do you start? Like, where do you even start? Like, if
Mhm.
you were to say, if they are listening to this and they're like, Liliana, I'm in. Um, like where, what's step one?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Step one, you can do several things, right?
Mhm.
One thing is to ask, just go and get a what was it, Survey Monkey account, and send an email to your customers, existing or past, and
Mhm.
ask them if they would recommend you to a friend or a family after interacting with you.
Mhm.
And that question has online data all over the place, and see how you stack.
Mhm.
It's -100 to +100 range. And if you can see what's good, what's bad. If you're
Yeah.
bad, you have work to do. If you're
Mhm.
good, you probably are fine.
Mhm.
Another thing I would do is I would survey your employees.
Mhm.
I would take the same Survey Monkey account and send it to your employees and say, do you feel supported at work? And another question that we used to be asked that I loved was, do you see yourself working here next year? Make it
Oh, that's an
anonymous.
interesting question.
Make it
Yeah.
anonymous. Make it anonymous. Everybody needs to trust the system. So make sure you explicitly say this is anonymous. And the last thing is, and I mean, we can talk more about this, but the last thing is, do you feel supported by your supervisor? Because that's the weakest
Mhm.
link of, and why is we all know people leave because they have bad supervisors. So that is where I would start.
Yeah.
And then a part of that, there is a whole diagnostic tool we have. I mean, there's a lot you can do to start understanding
Mhm.
better. How are you doing? We do that. Where first of the things we do with some of our customers is to do an audit. I hate the word audit, so
Mhm.
let's go with diagnostic, but essentially experiencing it and coming back saying, here is where
Yeah.
your weak points are. Here's where you can do better.
Yeah. That would be very, I would say, you know what, you have to be committed, because I'm sure some of what you'd see would feel great, and some of it would be painful, but it's probably been lurking in the back of your head. And so I think it was Jim Collins who said, successful businesses confront the brutal facts, you know, and I think that's a really important part. So
I
this go
I
ahead, sorry.
had one of my favorite ones is my mentor said that the level of your success is directly correlated to the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have.
The level of your success is directly correlated to the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. That you can take that to the bank, as they say. Yeah,
Love it.
yeah, how true that is. So, Lillian, I promise, this is the last question.
Okay.
Um, People are going to watch this. People are going to listen to this. People are going to share this to their boss. They're going to say, "You need to watch this." How does somebody get a hold of you and your team? So, you would honor us if you would just brag about us and just point at your billboard for a moment. How do we get a hold of you?
Well, I'm obsessed with my email. I'm actually
Mhm.
very because I came from corporate, so I'm very used to email. This
Mhm.
is a damage, permanent damage. And my email is my first name, Liliana at thepetrovaexperience.com, which is my company name.
Mhm.
If you reach out, I do get a lot of emails. So if you reach out,
Okay.
please flag know-how, and I'll know. But it's easy. It's my first name at the Petrova Experience. From a social media perspective, I'm very active on LinkedIn. That's,
Mhm.
as you know, I'm also on Instagram. The LinkedIn, we have two accounts. One is my name, Liliana Petrova, and we have a company account, the Petrova
Mhm.
Experience.
Yeah,
Instagram is just the business. Um,
fantastic.
I'm not so good at Twitter, so don't go there.
Well, you know what? I don't want to speak for all of our industry, but I don't think that Twitter, is like a big deal in restoration. It's maybe TikTok, but no, I'm just joking. It's
I
uh
actually can see that, especially for the 20 years old.
yeah.
Where is your industry usually? What's the channel that they are?
You know what? I would say LinkedIn, probably for a lot of the I would say decision makers.
Mhm.
For some of the smaller businesses, probably Facebook. Some really great communities on Facebook, and then a lot. Yeah, you know what? Email is still
Yep.
it's still
I
big.
still,
It's still
yeah,
alive and strong.
yes, I agree.
Mhm.
Well, thank you for having me. This is great.
Yeah.
Great
No,
conversation.
I this has been fantastic, Louis, and anytime I'm having a conversation and I pull out my own notebook, I'm like, I gotta start writing some of this stuff down. I mean, this is a very high impact conversation, and I really think we just touched the surface. And so one of the things that we'll do when we share this is we'll make sure to share that contact information you provided, as well as just links to your website and to your LinkedIn page. And I just want to summarize. I just kind of want to stick the landing here, is that we did the largest study on the restoration industry customer reviews. We looked at one-star reviews across all 50 US states. And one
Okay.
of the things that we found was one of the number one reasons why customers just crush a restoration company online is because they had a terrible customer experience. And
Wow.
so everything that you talked about goes after like one of the jugulars of
Mhm.
why customers pick up their keyboard and they say, I have to tell someone, I have to warn somebody to stay clear from this company, and everything that you've described today is so relevant, and the tangible elements that you led off with. You're going to retain your staff longer. You're going to be able to create an experience that happens at such a sensitive moment in a person's life experience that is going to be amplified. But also the fact that you could charge more. Those three things, I'll tell you, if I was to survey the industry, they are trying to figure out how to crack those nuts. So I hope that people take this seriously. They take to their inbox and they ask you for some help.
And
Yeah.
just to wrap up on my end, is it does feel intimidating and nebulous. Like you said, even in the beginning, everybody starts that journey with me. They always say, "Oh my God, I don't know, this is so vague," but there,
Mhm.
hopefully, I told you and showed you that there is a very clear path that I know works. It's repeatable, so it's doable. In other words, you just need to commit and have
Mhm.
some sort of a guide, and you will just chug along and get through the steps, and it will be your brand before you know it.
Yeah. That's great. Well, that's a great way. That's a great place to end, Liliana. So thanks for being so generous. Thanks for, I would say just like being empathetic for our audience. And I really think that what you're doing is critical. I think what you're doing is really important, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Welcome to Know How. With Know How, your team does things the right way every time. Know How eliminates errors from frontline workers by providing them with a step-by-step guide for all aspects of their job, freeing up manager time, owner bandwidth, and creating happier customers. Let's go for a tour. This is your homepage on Know How. It's a unique, personalized hub with all your company's processes and how-to available at the fingertips of every team member. Everyone can customize their view to only show the company how-to that's most relevant to their role, such as production or sales processes. Everyone knows the natural habitat of a company process manual is sitting on a shelf collecting dust. But with Know-How, employees access your company's expertise instantly through a sleek, user-friendly mobile app that stays with them every moment of the day, right in their pocket. Jay is out on a job site setting up a dehumidifier on a water loss. Let's say Jay is new on the team or just needs a quick refresher. Discovering the best way to set up a dehumidifier is as simple as a quick search. Within a few keystrokes, Jay can find the process, set up a dehumidifier, and see a step-by-step guide on how to properly set up his dehumidifier and get it up and running. As he works through these steps, his manager Sarah gets real-time updates on the work that Jay and every other team member is tackling. At Know-How, we take the work of getting your company's expertise into the hands of every team member seriously. On remote work sites with no cell reception, work still needs to be done the right way. With Know-How, it is super simple to download your company's processes and take them with you offline.
¿Tus empleados no pueden leer inglés? No hay problema, amigo. Know-How puede traducir fácilmente cualquier proceso de tu empresa al español inmediatamente. Con Know-How, todo el equipo puede acceder a las instrucciones en el idioma que prefieran.
We all know that well-defined, easy-to-access processes are the operating system of every company that wants to grow without compromise, minimize errors, keep margins high, and give employees what they need to deliver a market-leading experience to customers. So why don't more companies take the time to do it? It's because, well, building processes sucks. It's painful and difficult, or at least it used to be. Let's show you what it looks like now with Know-How. Say you're out on a job site and you want to show your team members how to remove water-damaged drywall. With the click of a button, you can start jotting down the steps as easily as you jot down your grocery list. Don't want to type? Just dictate what the next step is into your phone, or even better, save yourself 1,000 words and just post a few photos instead. Hyperlinks, images, videos, what used to take hours behind a computer takes only a few minutes with Know-How. Once you've defined all the steps, Know-How makes it look slick and gives you a custom URL you can send to any team members via text, email, or any other messaging app you choose. And as your business and processes evolve, so does your Know-How hub. Any process improvements you make get synchronized to everybody's phone instantly, and you can even send out an alert to notify relevant employees that a company process has been updated. You can assign those processes to a team member and receive notifications when they complete it, or fall behind. With well over 100 expert-built templates to help get you started, becoming a robust, well-oiled, process-driven company has never been easier, or been more fun. With Know-How, your staff have instant access to guidance wherever they go. Your managers have time to take on more, and for once, you have a little peace of mind that things are being done the right way, with or without you.